Hello, this is Scix. I'm just checking the validity of the stream. There it is. I don't know what's up with that aspect ratio, but I don't like it. I guess it's okay. It feels wide. Does it feel wide to you? Let's see, can I find the URL of this so that I can send it to you? Yes. Gotta change my header there. All right. Here goes. Now that is something weird about the aspect ratio. I don't look that wide on my own screen. Well, we will deal with it. Here is Wide Scix reading from Chunnel Surfer II, a series of I don't know how many parts. This is Chunnel Surfer II. There is no one, also readable as There is no I, by Scix Maddix, which is me. Chunnel Surfer II by Scott Sherman Scix Maddix. Now you know my middle name. Copyright 2007. It amazes me how long ago this was. Published by Scott Sherman Scix Maddix, printed through Lulu Press, lulu.com, licensed under Creative Commons, work of fiction, everything you read is a lie, there is no secret message in the copyright page. Dedicated to all who have gone before and all who are still going. Introduction. What you hold is an experiment. It is a book, part novel, part autobiography, part short story collection. It is, as far as I know, a unique form of literature, applying rules of collage, abstract, punk, and mashup remix to a print medium. Unbeknownst to the author, it was written by an undiagnosed adult with ADD, attention deficit disorder. The author might argue that deficit and disorder are misnomers, but that's what the smart guys call it. Hang on. I can make this a little easier for myself. Much better. And having a diagnosis helps one begin to learn how to live in an ADD world, with an ADD brain. So does that make the book a mere symptom of a disorder? I would like to think not, but I believe all of the more interesting things in life can be viewed usefully through more than one model. So CS2 can be seen as a sign of madness. It could also be genius, or a map of a chaotic mind, or a model itself of a multi-layered universe, or a sign of a short attention span generation, or its own internal conceit. About the short attention span generation, I'm Gen X, and mid to upper Gen X, and we were considered short attention span, and now my generation are calling the younger folk short attention span people. I'm pretty sure Aristotle mentioned the short attention span of kids, because they no longer memorized epics, they actually read them. Or its own internal conceit, a literary channel surfing, something that might be more interesting as a writer's exercise than as a book to read. Pick your favorites. So how should you read it? I'd say there's no right answer. Skip around, read it backwards, open it at random, skip slow bits, scan and read things that strike your interest, flip around and look for sexy bits. Or, you could read it linearly from cover to cover. Let it wash over you. Analyze it. Make notes and maps and diagrams. Read it on the can. Read it in groups. Photocopy pages and make collages from them. And if you think you found something hidden within, you have whether the author was aware of putting it there or not. Feel free to drop him a line if you can find him. Sequel is still being written, and it still is. Actually, it's a complete manuscript, so it's being edited. Lo, these many years later. We wonder how much has been learned by writing CS2, December 2006. Now to begin with Chapter 1. Now, just a point of formatting. It's broken down into numbered segments. Come on. Focus. I know you know how to focus when there's not a face. Oh, here. Let me take my face off. Well, I hate focus. 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 Well, okay, it's numbered sections. And I'll read them in order. There are sections that the formatting is different. There are images. I'll do my best to relay them, considering I can't get the damn camera to focus on the book. I'll probably just skip over the images. Chapter 1, Do Not Believe You Understand What Is Going On. 001. It was just past noon on October 13th, 2023, when the world ended. It was just past noon on October 13th, 2023, when the world began. I aged 26 years in that moment, and I was a lucky one. 002. Vera Furland looked at the smiling, bearded faces of her pansy bed. With a satisfied grunt, she ripped all the plants out and threw them onto the pavement. Damned hippies, she muttered, before going back inside to make PB&J sandwiches for the Taylor children. 003. Warren, I say, I have been patient, but this must be the last time. Warren turns slowly to face me. His face is like scarred marble, the steps of a mansion that survived a war, and his glare of pure hatred would have chilled me had I not seen it so often before. I promise you will never have to deal with me again, he pronounced. I waited for him to lumber off. 004. The scent of lime inexplicably wafted through the garage, tainting the clean masculine scent of grease, gas, sweat. Some of these segments are longer than these short frags. This is just how we're starting off. 005. The surprising thing was the sound. Breaking bones sound exactly like potato chips in your head. Martin made a mental note to write that down when Will stopped screaming and he could hear himself think again. 006. Deep inside the watermelon, Howard wriggled his fingers with glee. 007. Vincent knew what it was like to be a god. He lay back, the distant sounds of the city fading, until all he could hear was the ticking of his grandmother's clock. Slowly an image formed in his mind of a pagoda and a fox-headed woman smiling at him. So you returned, she said, in a voice like warmed honey. I have, he rumbled, flexing his arms before him. I am glad. The village needs your help, she said, but first I desperately need you to take me from behind. Vincent smiled and opened his robe. Oh, master, she cried, have you done your homework? Vincent cracked his eye open. Damn it, Grandma, I told you to knock. I'm sorry, Mr. Grumpy Pants, said his grandmother from the doorway. I'll just take these warm cookies back with me. No, I'm sorry. I was about to start my homework. All right, dear, she said warmly. Thanks, Grandma. See, that was a bit naughty. There are naughty elements here. 008. There was a light breeze blowing from the direction of the stream, and Tom could smell the mossy rocks from where he sat, dreaming against a stone wall older than his grandparents. 009. The stone sphere hung in midair, turning slowly, as if floating in an eddy invisible and intangible to the humans present. There it is, said Dorian, the big gray ball. Sort of a greenish gray, said Eventrude. Are you sure this is the right one? More to the point, said Lavinda. What the fuck are we going to do with it now that we found it? 010. And Venus, he said with a sniff, is my least favorite planet. It's so commercial. 011. Ah, somebody keyed my car. Wait, Leonard, those scratches are an ancient Celtic alphabet called Ogham. Owam? What? Let me see. It spells out Leonardisadic. Leonard is a dick? What the hell? Either you've pissed off an ancient Celt, or you cut off Flo from the Ancient Languages Department when you pulled in this morning. 012. Dapples, thought John, as the sunlight filtered through branches and leaves formed shifting patterns on his outstretched legs. It was the most peaceful he had felt since quitting his job and hitchhiking to his old stomping grounds in Maine. If only I had some moxie. Suddenly the pattern of dappled shadow shifted, and a large dark shape hurtled toward him from above. 013. It's going to be a little while before we get to the really long parts. There's some full-length stories in here. 013. The bar was crowded with the sort of patrons Judy hated. Hip, well-dressed, pretentious. They sipped microbrews and listened to indie rock on the jukebox. God damn it, that one's even raising his motherfucking pinky. Get out, she yelled, bowling into the pub like a matted steer. Get out, it's my goddamn bar, you bunch of fucking preppy pukes. 014. Salsa music always makes me horny, she purred. I laughed and threw my drink in her lap. Easy there, Tiger, I said. You, she fumed, you goddamn cock tease. A bit of a story about this book. My stepfather bought a copy of this book, loved it so much. He was a bus driver, and he used to pass the book around to the students as sort of a treat. And I thought that was neat, but now as I'm reading it, like, there's a lot in there that maybe you shouldn't be handing to students. I'm glad he didn't get into trouble. 015. The lady in blue walks past me, spine erect, eyes straight ahead. I imagine a finishing school matron pounding a staff on the ground, crying, "You'll never find a man if you slouch." I catch her eye as she turns the corner. She smiles, and I know she is a lesbian. That one's a true story. He was a goon. Listen, ma'am, I'm going to need more details than that. How tall was he? What color was his skin, his hair, his eyes? What was he wearing? You know, I have no idea. He was just a goon, see? Yeah, I see. Why don't you go home and rest, Mrs. McPherson? If you remember any details about the assailant, give us a call. Wait, there is one thing. Yes? His skin was a deep shade of green. 017. The landlord strode in like he owned the place. 018. Reginald J. Fabglitter strode in like he owned the place. He twitched the hem of his cloak just a hair, and it rose and flowed behind him like a contrail. You all know who I am, he said. But who the hell are all of you? I feel that way sometimes. 019. The stack of money teetered, and, overbalanced by an errant breeze, succumbed to nature and collapsed into a chaotic heap on the floor. Unimpressed, Mr. Puff Puff and Whiskins the elder merely found the mess to be more attractive than their poorly kept litter box. A key rattled in the lock. Everybody froze. 020. I slip into my favorite pair of jeans, old, worn, soft, faded winter sky blue. They're still warm from the dryer. My balls slide out the hole in the crotch and plop onto my seat, reminding me of why I don't wear these pants anymore. That's one for the little hangers out there. 021. Harold, she whispered urgently. Harold, stop a minute. I think I hear a prowler. Harold paused in mid-thrust, a drop of sweat glinting from his chin before falling weightlessly onto Mildred's heaving bosom. What? Man, there's a lot more sex in here than I thought. 022. He couldn't have labeled himself as punk more aptly if he had been standing on the streets yelling anarchy in the UK at the top of his lungs, which he then started to do. I sat there, head down, Grandma's banana cream pie balanced across my knees. The bus jostled on, the other riders trying to ignore the mohawked banshee in their midst. Suddenly I remembered Great Uncle Alf's days in the vaudeville theater, and before I knew it, my pie was impaled on a bright green liberty spike, dripping down the punk's face. The next thing he did surprised us all. 023. Affidavit. I, Scott Maddix, being first duly sworn, do hereby affirm and state to the best of my knowledge, information, and belief the following. My name is Scott Maddix. I have personal knowledge concerning the facts contained herein. Here's the first section of noise. We're not going to get it, but it's garbled text. It is unreadable, and I'm not going to try. But that's point 3 of the affidavit in section 023. Although there are a couple words and pronounceables in there, I don't believe there's anything in there backwards or hidden or in another language. So I'm not going to try and piece it apart. 024. Damn cold, she sniffed, wiping her nose and pulling her coat more tightly around herself. I was oblivious, though. The smell of damp mittens, melting snow on our shoulders, and the piney scent of the needles we crushed as we tramped through the woods reminded me of childhood sledding parties, hot cocoa, and my first kiss. That's not autobiographical. I mean, everything but the first kiss part. Repressed gay dude in small town Maine doesn't get a romantic first kiss like that. 025. The man strode to the front of the room. I don't expect any of you to understand a single word I am saying, he said. The esoteric mysteries are beyond the ken of ordinary minds. The pigs grunted and shuffled, watching hopefully for the possibility of marshmallows. 026. It was just as Luke Skywalker was meeting Yoda that I felt his hand slip onto my lap, questing, and I knew that my suspicions were correct. I forced my box of jujubes into his hand and made my way to the aisle, mumbling something about needing to go to the bathroom. Outside it was raining, and I was grateful. When the weather matches my mood, it always gives me a sense of rightness somehow. 027. What the fuck? They're coming around the back of the house, I said. We need to be ready. Ready. All we have is a shovel and a phone book. Have you ever been hit on the head with a phone book? I asked. See, back in the day, there was a thing called a phone book. In a moment, we heard their footsteps. The undead were afoot tonight, just as Margie had predicted, just as Father Flynn had assured us was not possible. There were 2 of them. One of them was my mother. I rushed forward, phone book raised, and brought the spine of it smartly down onto her head. Jim, meanwhile, seemed to be having trouble wielding a garden spade. The head, I yelled, as Mother crumpled to the ground, that hopeful look still on her face. 028. In between seconds we hung, expectant, glittering, droplets on cobwebs. Brian's cough spun out until all we could hear was one pure note, a song in glass. Some of these do link together. You may start seeing patterns already. Maybe it will take a while. This is an old print. It's a little bit coffee stains on the side. I think that was a nice little poetic paragraph there, you know. The room, 029. The room smelled of old rubber bands and tinned ham. I looked at my mom, but she was carefully ignoring my discomfort. Aha! Visitors, came a voice from behind a stack of magazines. I remember there was a room that smelled of old rubber bands and tinned ham that gave rise to that paragraph. 030. That magnifying lens used to keep me occupied for hours when I was a child, examining dirt, my thumbprints, bugs, plants, and imagining I could see cells, electrons, galaxies, other worlds. When I saw it there, amidst my grandmother's things, the truth of her passing hit me for the first time, and I crumpled like damp tissue, sliding into her chair, clutching the lens, smelling her home, mourning lost summers, filled cookies, flower gardens, and the hugs that defined all hugs for me. Bleary-eyed, I wiped my nose on my sleeve and peered into the lens. I almost dropped it when I recognized what I was seeing. That was autobiographical. 031. "Get him," she screamed, pumping her fat fist in the chill November air, her breath circling her head like pipe smoke. Down on the field, her son looked up into the stands, embarrassed, and was immediately tackled from behind. 032. The porn theater opened for business promptly at 9 a.m. every morning. Mildred made a pot of tea and settled into her crocheting, and was generally left to herself for a few hours before the first wary customer would shuffle in, request a token, and head to the back room. Booth number 9 was the one. Though none of the patrons knew, that particular naughty vixen was the same woman who'd given them their coin. They never would have believed it. 033. Have a nice day. Thanks. 034. Well, I never, she screamed and slammed out of my life. Bits of plaster rained down and stuck in my hair. It wasn't true. She really had. But I guess maybe she couldn't remember? Not that it mattered anymore. The heavy jazz from next door suddenly went up in volume, and I found myself on the floor, my head throbbing a syncopated bass line, a viscous puddle dampening my knees. Not that it mattered. Not really. 035. I moved here to get away from the street thugs and hustlers of my old neighborhood. I expected peace and tranquility. I expected boredom. I expected to be left alone. But here I was, a green-skinned ogre on my doorstep, demanding protection money like a common hood. I tried to remember if they were weak against iron or silver or garlic. "I'm sorry," I said. "John's not at home. You'll have to come back in the morning." "Oh," it grunted. "Excuse me." I remember the ogre's weakness. They're dumb as a bag of cake batter. See, that one links to the short about goons. Green-skinned. 036. When I saw the leprechaun, I made a vaudevillian's vow to keep away from liquor. But really it was the most interesting thing that had ever happened to me since moving to Manhattan. I ordered another pint and thought of gold. 037. "Form," he said. "Form, form, form." We all listened. This was what we had come to hear. "It all starts with breasts," he said, and we took notes. 038. This one is an actual observation. "He wears his hair like a wig, his clothes like a disguise." He bought a magazine and moved on, but the image remains, an empty disguise of a man, perhaps born that way, perhaps created, or perhaps an artifact, an accidental scrap of flotsam tossed up by an eddy in the currents of existence. You may laugh, but I know such things are possible, and not all of them are as insipid as the disguise man that buys butt porn from our shop every Thursday at 2:30 like clockwork. 039. Just outside the doorway, the summer heat enveloped him like an overcoat, heavy, warm, and comfortable. 040. It was the last Friday of the month, and the line of men at the teller's window were a tableau begging to be titled Blue Collar Payday. Perhaps a Johnny Cash song should be playing, not the tinny classical being piped in through the dusty speaker grills in the ceiling. 041. The glade sat in silence, not so much quiet as expectant, as if it knew that it was merely stage dressing for some dramatic entrance, scene, and exit. After a moment, a breaking twig heralded the beginning, and the fairy procession strode in, accompanied by birdsong and trumpets, and a small child was discovered beneath a flowering bower. Now that actually links to Patchworld, oddly enough. A few of these bits do. I took parts of Chunnel Surfer II when I was putting Patchworld together, because it's still kind of a patchwork story, even though it's a lot more linear and a lot more a traditional novel. 042. Pearl was from Floxenaw City, but that wasn't important. That's a pun if you know the word floxinosity, which you probably don't. It's one of those words that only exists in order to be a long word. 043. This is the first one with Butch in it. He'll be around. When Butch was 6, his parents were in a car accident. They just skidded off an icy patch of the road. Black ice was a terrible nuisance that winter. No one was hurt, but they'd been on their way to pick him up from school, and an hour-and-a-half delay was a pretty big deal to the boy. Of course, his mom and dad were still shaken from the accident, and maybe weren't thinking quite straight, and Dad wound up chewing him out for asking too many questions on their way home in a borrowed car. Well, you know how kids are, and young Butch was pretty sure something was wrong, something he'd done, and he vowed to himself right then and there to always be a good boy, so no one would know. That was so long ago, and so buried deep, Butch had probably not remembered if you asked him, but from that day forward he always did his chores, always got good grades, always did the right thing, all to cover up an ancient guilt for a crime that never happened. And for most of his life, Butch couldn't not be good. Later, he put different grown-up words on it. He was responsible, devoted, dedicated, but deep, deep down, he was still telling himself he had to be a good boy. He had to be the best little boy there ever was, so nothing like being left on the schoolyard curb for an hour and a half would ever happen again. That's actually how personality traits come into being sometimes. 044. Let me check for comments. I doubt there's anyone watching. There rarely is. Current viewers 0. I'm hoping that thumbnail with the weird aspect ratio is not what's going out live. We're at almost a half an hour. 044. Margaret looked around the room. The other girls were pointedly ignoring her, talking, twirling their hair, popping their gum. She stood there in the doorway just knowing she still smelled like horse crap, even though she'd showered, knowing everyone was just overjoyed at a chance to rub her nose in the fact that she lived on a farm. Well, fuck 'em. I don't care what they think. She smiled and, striding into the room, brayed like a mule so everyone turned and laughed. I can laugh at myself. I can be funny. They'll like me if I'm funny. That's the same story as the Butch story previously. Just that moment of deciding, fuck it, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be this thing. Roger's 045. Roger's father stared vacantly out the window. Thinking about Charlene again, no doubt. 3 years in the grave. Roger suddenly realized that his father wasn't going to get over it. Was never going to get better. Maybe somewhere deep down his father was tired of taking care of Roger, and so he was retreating into his mourning so that he wouldn't have to face it. Maybe he secretly hated Roger for surviving. Stranger things had happened, Roger knew. Well, it was time he left for college anyway. Maybe he'd take a dorm room on campus after all, get a job so Dad wouldn't have to pay. Roger would take care of everything himself, stay out of everyone's way. No need to bother anyone. Roger left the room to pack. He never talked to his father in person again. Same story. 046. Allison and Frank pretended to enjoy their meal. I want to do the right thing, said Frank, playing the part of Butch. Yeah, well, sometimes there is no right thing. You just have to decide what you want. There's always a right thing, he said. Leaving you alone wouldn't be it. You're not listening to me, she said. I don't want you to stay out of some sort of Boy Scout obligation. Well, you're a damn sight easier on the eyes than any Boy Scout in my troop. That's not funny, Frank. And that's Frank as Margaret. Sorry, just trying to lighten the mood here. I'm really at a loss. I know you are, she said. I do love you, you know. And I love you too. But you don't seem to want me around. And now there's Frank as Roger. What? You know, you're right. You don't need me bothering you. We both have our own lives to lead. Frank, what are you? No, really, thank you. It was good for me to see it clearly. I'll head off now, actually. Frank stood, threw a 20 on the table, and strode out of the room. What the hell just happened? Asked Allison of the waitress, who appeared to refill her wineglass. Honey, she said, a lot of couples come here to break up. I think it's the veal. 047. The thing about coffee, he said, is that it was invented by the Sufis to induce the trance-like state the dervishes enter into as they spin. He swirled his cup, admiring the spiraling galaxy of misty crema on its surface, then quaffed the last of his double espresso. I firmly believe that this substance right here has mystical properties, if only we knew or remembered how to prepare it. Fire crackle punctuated the silence before the bear spoke. Father, I think you're loopy, but based on what we just saw in that cave, I'd say you are onto something. I say we get that map and find that so-called magic pot. Gretchen and Goblin Bob nodded their agreement, and the Believers Club toasted their newest quest with latte, espresso, mocha, and house blend, right there in the coffee shop on the corner of Barnard and Main on the night before Groundhog Day. That's the first segment of the Believers Club, who becomes a bigger part of sequel. But I believe they return a few times in here. We're up to 48. Let's go at least to 50. Maybe we want to go to 100. I want to get into some of the longer pieces. There are some parts in here I'm probably going to feel uncomfortable about. I've grown a lot since 2007. And some things have changed. I guess I'm going to try and keep going to 100. We're at 32 minutes. We'll make it about an hour. Still no one watching. Talking to myself. 048. As Linda leaned with her head against the glass, the faces in the family portrait shop seemed to watch her. Chubby babies, grinning, love-struck prom royalty, 3-generation portraits, all looking out with mild amusement. The glass was cool against her flesh, taking the edge off the sweltering Savannah night, the night when Bobby had left her for her sister. She looked up. Something in the light, the reflection in the glass, the tears in her eyes had changed the portraits. Smiles were now leers. Eyes were now hollow. The baby was grasping for her throat. She gasped, stepped back. Nothing had changed. Those photographs were evil. Here's a recurring theme, the what I call the blink ghosts. The kind of just for a moment things look different and then they shift back. In the fiction, that's a sign of touching an alternate universe, or sometimes like seeing actual ghosts. But alternate worlds mostly, and maybe ghosts are an artifact of alternate worlds. In reality, it's something I experience as part of depression. Did you know that significant depression can lead to hallucination? This was something I did not yet know about myself. 49. 049. The man, the wild-eyed Santa Claus man, the man in the booth behind me, he was clearly talking to himself. John sat across from me, napkin-doodling, as I nattered on, trying to kill silences before that man's booming preacher voice could bell. I failed and flustered disgracefully. As I discoursed the martial infidelities of my next-door neighbors, Sorry. That's kind of a funny. As I discoursed the marital infidelities of my next-door neighbors, John suddenly half stood, leaned across the table, and showed his napkin over my shoulder to the man behind me, who fell silent. As did I. Helpless, I started up again in moments, never referring to the man or to John's unseemly behavior, but I snuck a peek at his napkin scribble. "I see you," it said. 050. Click. "Ah, yes, thanks, Harry. Hey, wait a minute. Thud, Harry, you didn't clean the ceiling fan like I asked, did you? There's fucking dust bunnies in the wet paint, you imbecile." That was autobiographical. 051. Here we get to Wiederman, who connects to Butch. Named after a friend who died in my youth. 051. John Wiederman backed slowly away from the dog tied up in front of 126 West Main Street. Not because it was barking at him, it wasn't, but because it was the wrong dog. The Lazars had a rangy old lop-eared mutt. This dog wearing the same collar, he noted, worn brown leather with a brass medallion reading Pepper, was an irritable toy poodle dyed pink, the sort of frou-frou show dog Dan Lazar might go out of his way to hit with his Jeep, but never own. Certainly not tie up in front yard for everyone to see. Maybe Betty's mother is visiting, he thought. Maybe it's her dog. But he didn't believe it, and the worry line between his shaggy brows deepened, added another item to his list, and Wiederman hunched away, no longer looking to the right or left, no longer taking in every detail of his walk. 052. Have a nice day. Thanks. 053. The town of South Haven, which is where most things happen. The town of South Haven was small but comfortable. It had a tannery that employed over half the town, a school, 2 congregational churches, a few shops, a defunct railway depot, and homes nearly as old as the town itself. The tannery, home of Wyatt Belts, nearly closed in the 80s, but largely South Haven was a town free from typical 21st century anxiety. There hadn't been a school shooting since a hunting rifle accidentally went off on the first day of deer season in 1943. No one seemed too interested in smoking pot, and they had only as many teen pregnancies as the local church charities could handle. There was no town drunk. As such, the rumor mill was often bored into spinning ever more fanciful yarns. One paragon of this network, one Agnes Longbottom by name, took to hanging out at the Main Street diner, holding court with the other old farts who gathered there. "I hear tell he's a millionaire," she said. "But I've seen his house," said Sam Snell, retired mail carrier for the town. "It ain't much to write home about." "Maybe not," she said, "but have you seen the inside?" "Well, no." "There you go, then," she said. They're talking about Old Man Wiederman from the earlier segment. 054. The town had only one eccentric, a garrulous old man named Wiederman, who circumnavigated the town on foot every morning, rain, snow, or shine. 055. The house was spooky, not Ghosts of the Living Dead spooky, more dotty old lady spooky. It gave me the willies to be there nonetheless. But it is my job to deliver meals to all the old folks on the route, and Granny Jenks and her dry old cookies were just one more meal. 056. When I heard the music, I was moved. I actually had a goddamn physiological response. You hear what I'm saying? My throat about swole closed, my heart fluttered, my stomach dropped like a plummet down the Matterhorn. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard, and the last time I heard Old Foggy play. 057. Alright, this is the last segment of Chapter 1. I think we'll do chapters instead of increments of 50. Now, the last segment of every chapter has a distinct quality. It's made up of pieces of the chapter. It's utter nonsense, but sometimes things combine in interesting ways. 057. Do not believe I was a lucky one. the satisfied grunt, she ripped pure hatred like potato chips deep inside, an image older than his grandparents. What the fuck is my least favorite you pulled? Suddenly I imagine a goon like a contrail. Mr. Puff Puff plops onto my seat. What? On our shoulders, the esoteric mysteries to the bathroom, afoot tonight, a song in glass and tinned ham, other worlds. Have a nice day, she screamed, and on my doorstep a vaudevillian with breasts like clockwork. The beginning, that wasn't important. Quite straight. Rub her nose. Stranger things trying to lighten the silence were evil. I see you. Every detail. As many teens dry. Old. You hear what I'm saying? And that's chapter 1. I'm going to mark my space with this business card from the Greenwood Dental Clinic, which I recommend. And that's Chunnel Surfer II. Nobody's watching. And when nobody's watching, sometimes my consistency isn't the strongest. But if people start watching, I'll do this daily. And if I keep talking to myself, I may not get through the whole book before I give up. So, if you are watching, give me likes and subscribes and things like that so I know you're watching. Otherwise, I will have no idea I'm not talking to myself. Thank you.